Make sense to suggest that perhaps you'd... Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Gardner. Do we, Pat, bring the blue slips up if there are any? There are none. Mr. Gardner?
Thank you very much. Charles Gardner, Delta Vision Foundation. I want to continue to commend you for efforts around the near-term actions. The iterative process here, I think, is working. We're seeing continuous improvement. And I'm particularly encouraged by the recent discussion we just had on It's About Results. And we got to get there. I have, in the spirit of that continuous improvement, I have a couple of suggestions, particularly on the strategy 4, which I think is the strategy that should be about results. It's called cross-cutting strategy, which is, to me, is a meaningless bureaucratic phrase. And I would suggest following the format of the other strategies is starting with a verb. My starting suggestion is enhance performance and results. And in that, fold in both the concept that is there, which is about building the science program into the implementation of near-term actions that Randy Fiorini frequently raises. But I think also it is incorporating the performance measurements, the performance outcomes that are expected. I'm still working my way through the final Delta plan, but I don't see a near-term action yet in there about defining the performance measures. And I think that's a really critical thing. You are now talking about how do we get results. And you're talking about how do we coordinate this larger group of agencies that you're trying to align. And clear goals, objectives, and performance outcomes are the objective way to do that. And it's uncomfortable. It's going to be uncomfortable for all of your partners to shine a light on these things. But I think it is the way that you start to create alignment to the Delta plan, the larger objectives we're trying to achieve. I also wanted to just touch on the list of the cross-cut budget list is quite helpful to see. But as the chairman noted, it really is just talking about expenditures, which is really just talking about driving around in the planning parking lot. Maybe it's talking about adding more spaces to the parking lot, as in more studies. But we really need to start measuring, are we actually getting cars out of the parking lot and onto the road? And we've done this in a very simple, clear way with our report card and how to measure actions. And are we making progress on those actions? I'm happy to share that with you and the staff. But we need to have some fiscal accountability for results as well. And I think that in itself is an important performance measure. And I wanted to highlight an example of that, not to pick on anyone particularly, but I know this is a topic that you talked about a lot this year is levy improvements. How do we actually implement levy improvements? There was a lot of discussion about this year's funding from DWR to improve levies to the HMP standard. And projects were proposed. There was a solicitation. Projects were proposed, modified, agreed on, and yet that funding has not yet been implemented. We are not implementing those projects because of the friction losses in state processes we just can't seem to get that money, those grants approved and on the ground to be implemented. So I think that fiscal responsibility is an important part of your performance measures as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gardner. Ms. Messer, to complicate your life, I have been invited to speak at the UC Davis, I think it's Watershed Institute seminar in late January, and I will be speaking at length on near-term actions.
Okay, good to know.
I didn't do it just to plague you.
Now I know what I'm doing for Christmas.
Okay.